So I think we're recording now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen with you. And I'm going to lower my Google Meet. So if you have a question, please just chime in and let me know using your audio, because I won't be able to see your screen. Okay, so I'm going to be looking at my screen. So this is essentially my chemistry course, and I have turned on Ally, and this is in the faculty view. So this is editable view. And what you'll notice is when Ally is turned on in your course, there are a couple of things that you're going to be able to see that are different or new. Number one, there's this little icon that will be next to every title or content item or anything like that in Blackboard. And what if you hover your mouse over that, what will show up is this little thing that says alternative formats. And it's essentially telling you, if I were to click that, I could potentially download all of the content that happens to be in that content item in a variety of formats. These formats include EPUBs, which allow you to read them in say an e-reader. You can download a Braille version, an audio version. So if you wanted to listen to this, in your iTunes Music or Audible or whatever, you could do that too as well. A Beeline reader is a reader that allows for you to read content using varieties of color shading. It allows for you, if you've done a lot of computer work and your eyes are a little tired, it makes it easier to read that format in kind of a little bit faster way as well. And then you could also download a translated version. And then when you choose your option, you click download, and your computer would then download that to your location on your computer. I'm not going to do that just yet. I'm going to just kind of go over and show you a little bit about some content. So I happen to have content in a unit. All of my stuff happens to be in units. And in this unit overview, I have a couple of things. I've got text that you can see here, but I also have an image. And it turns out that you can still download the content in an alternative format, but this image right here happens to have an associated accessibility score. So this little icon is the second type of icon you will have in addition to your view and the faculty view in all of your Blackboard courses. And if I scroll down, you'll see that there's more content. I have an attached PDF here, and it has an accessibility score. It actually says this is pretty low.
Andrea?
Yes.
Is there any way you can make that larger?
Yeah, absolutely. Would that work?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, my screen's pretty large, so the font is it looks large to me, but maybe not to you guys. The accessibility score for every item you have posted, you will see. And some of these things, by the way, I've posted just for today, so my students won't actually use these in the future. I have some like PowerPoints and some Word documents. And what you'll notice is that all of the things that you have attached document-wise will have that score, okay? And Ally takes that content and looks at it based on the federal guidelines of accessibility and gives them a rating. And in fact, it gives it a rating at a percentage. And what you'll notice is it works kind of just like a speedometer. If you're at a low score, it's going to be red with the dial to the left. If you're at a high score, then that will probably be green at the dial to the right. Now, if you click on this icon, what will happen is Blackboard will pull up a new window. And what will happen is that window will pull up, and it will say, here's this item that you have posted. In this particular case, I have posted a PDF that is of the chapter from the textbook that we use for this course. And this PDF, the score it is actually giving it is a 5%, okay? And what it's going to do is it's going to give you a couple of things, of pieces of information about it. it's going to say this PDF is untagged. So this might be new information to a lot of faculty about how PDFs should be posted. We have been told for a very long time that at a bare minimum, your PDF documents should be readable, okay? And the actual official name of that is an OCR or Optical Character Recognition PDF. And I'll show you that here in just a second. But actually, there is another level to PDFs, and being tagged is one of those, meaning that each of the major components, like the title of the chapter or the fact that it's chapter 20, the title of the chapter, each major section, whether this is a paragraph or not, all of those in PDF forms have a way to behind the scenes tag them so that when a student uses a screen reader, okay, and this is for accessibility purposes, uses a screen reader, the screen reader will read them in a way that says, it knows the structure. So it knows to read the title first, and then it knows that this is actually a figure description rather than a title of a section, okay? And so it's really important that they have that untagged component. Now, the Ally will tell you kind of what is a tagged PDF, and so it'll go through and tell you some basic information about it. A lot of times there's a couple of pages of information about that. It'll even tell you why it's important, especially for visually impaired. It's easy for navigation, so forth and so on. If you close this, then what it will do, it'll tell you how to tag a PDF. Now, depending on how you originally got that PDF document will depend on how you tag it, okay? If for some reason you have a PDF document in which you created that using like Word or something like that, Ally will say, hey, do you have that original editable version, the Word version? You'll click yes, and then it will say, hey, what did you use it with? And from more often than not, you use like Word or PowerPoint. They have LibreOffice as well as options here. So if you used Word, you would click this, and it would literally take you step by step as to how to update that document. And while you're going through that step, it will say, okay, now that you've done that, let's upload the original document here by dragging and dropping or browsing, and then it will literally insert the updated document for you. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to do this for this particular one here, but depending on, kind of where your document came from will depend on what steps Ally gives you for that. Now, that may not be the only reason that you have a document that has an accessibility score that is low. If you want to have see where if something has more than one reason, there will be a little button here that says all issues. If you click all issues, it will tell you each thing that is wrong with your PDF in the accessibility front and what would happen, what score you would increase to if you were to fix that item. So apparently in my PDF, it says, obviously it's not tagged. So if I actually went in and tagged this PDF, the accessibility score would go up to a 93 from a 5. If I actually included a title, like actually tagged a title, it would move up to 7%. If I have some text that might have some insufficient contrast, and there is some in this particular document, I could move the score up to 5%, which would be, not an increase necessarily for this one. And then this PDF in the background doesn't have a language set, so you would set this language as English. There is this particular thing about having the language set is a new item when it comes to accessibility, and the guidance for how to update that is coming within the next, I want to say, I think in December is when they said that it should be out. So this is one way that you can look at that document. Now, when you close out of that, if you've done nothing, it's just going to continue to show that score. Students will still be able to click the alternative formats and download the document in a variety of ways. What is neat about this is the fact that you know what this score is, but if we go to the student view, so we're going to enter student view here. The neat thing about that is when we go to the content, the students will not be able to see that accessibility score. That is just for you, okay? What they're going to be able to see is that alternative formats link. And so no matter what you post, document-wise, the students and also text-wise within a content item, the students will be able to download in alternative formats. I do want to be kind of transparent with you. There are two things that if you post in a Blackboard course that the students will not be able to download in two formats. Number one, an Excel document. They cannot download those in alternative formats, nor can Blackboard Ally determine Excel's accessibility rating. So if you post an Excel document, and I'll show you one here in just a minute, Ally just essentially excuses it from any calculations or components that it works with. The second thing are videos. So for instance, I have several lecture videos. These are short little 5-minute videos on how to name certain types of organic molecules. A Blackboard does not check those in accessibility or Blackboard Ally doesn't do that. It only is going to look at actual text that you post in a content item, allowing the students to download that in alternative formats and actual documents that you have, okay? So let's exit the student preview. And then what I thought I would do is let me show you how to make certain pieces of content accessible that are pretty easy. And essentially there are going to be 5 things that in general that you as faculty are going to have posted that Ally is probably going to be looking at. One, images in your course. So I posted an image in this little Unit 1 overview that's a picture of vitamin A. And in this particular unit, the students are actually learning how to name items like this. But I have 0 alt text for this image. So the little accessibility score that goes along with this is really low. So if I click this, and it's going to say, hey, my accessibility rating is 25%. The image is missing a description, essentially alt text. So you can look at what does that mean. It kind of describes alt text as to what that happens to be, why it's important, and then how to write a good description. That's also something that it provides. And when you make alt text, essentially you need to decide, is that image something that deserves, you want your students to look at it and come away with something from it, or is it decorative? So this particular image for me in my course is decorative. There's nothing that I want the students to come away with that. So I'm not going to write a description that really describes to someone, say that we're blind and weren't able to see the image, to come away with the same ideas that if someone were able to actually see the image. So instead, what I'm going to do, I'm going to add something to the description that indicates that this is, say, an organic molecule, but just for, viewing purposes, rather than, there's no actual content that goes along with that. And so I can add that description here, and I might say something like, this image is a organic molecule and is just for aesthetics, or is just for viewing purposes. And it does, by the way, you don't have to have something this long. You could just say descriptive image or something like that. So when I get done with adding my alt text, I'll click add. And when I click add, it's going to say, hey, you've added alt text. Now your accessibility score is 100 for that item and you're done. And what will happen is that little dial will now become green. Okay. And so that's how, for images, it's very, very easy to do. I just wanted to, I'm sure a question about images in your exams is going to come up, especially Leanne. I think you happen to be here in this meeting. You use a lot of images when it comes to your classes, obviously, because of the type of content you teach. Ally does not actually look at exam pictures. And so that will not be a part of your accessibility overall score for a particular course. Okay. Does that make sense? Okay, so I did clarify that. I know I had talked to you about that previously.
Right. But I will have to create alt text for the thousands of images in the slideshows.
Right. And so I know this is something that you and I specifically have talked about, and this would be incredibly time consuming for you, particularly on the images. And so I want to make sure that I say this multiple times to all of you. In no way do I expect your courses to have an accessibility overall rating of 100%. It's so difficult to make that happen in any time frame. Okay. So all I ask is that every time you teach your course, improve your rating, improve it. And so I'm not going to give you a particular value. Does that mean it could be 1 point? I guess yes. Would we like it to be more? Yes. But let's try to just improve. So we're going to use the phrase progress, not perfection. And keep in mind, I have talked a lot to a lot of our ally kind of consultants. Our overall accessibility rating for our entire institution right now is in the 60 to 70%, which they have assured me is actually relatively good compared to a lot of other colleges. So we are not in a terrible situation, okay? But we always want to improve on what we're providing. So for you, Leanne, I might say, for this particular academic year, work on a unit, or whatever is kind of section you work with. Just work on those images and don't worry about the rest of them. This may take you a while to get there. Once you do this one time, though, it is done within that course. And if you copy that over to, say, your sandbox or a new semester, all of that carries over. So it's not, you do not have to do any of this multiple times. I think I heard someone did a little raise their hand.
That was me. It's Casey.
Okay, go ahead.
I have a question. For us, we have a lot of images on our test, but we're never going to have a student that can't see.
I would say on your exams, Casey, that I would leave those absolutely last. If that's something you ever want to look at, trying to make them accessible, then I would wait. Where you're probably in that situation coming from, and this may not necessarily be for you, but I know in a current class of a faculty member they have right now, someone needs a screen reader for an exam that has images in it. And so they kind of have to have alt text for the student to be able to even understand that there's even an image there, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And so,
I just don't want I wouldn't want to put a description and then you roll over it or whatever, and then it tells you what the image is.
Right.
Well, the student
in that particular case, just like I was talking with Leanne, and I think I might have been talking to some of the biology faculty about that. When it comes to an exam, a lot of times in a teaching situation, the description in an image gives context to what the student should be seeing. In an exam, you can't give the answer away, right? And so it might be something as simple as an exam image. It had to be something really general. So this is why Ally doesn't actually look at images in exams because of that particular situation, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Because that would be pretty difficult to do. That's why if I would wait on the exam images, if that's something you're interested in doing, I would instead focus on the content that you're posting in your course.
Okay.
If that makes sense. I think there were a couple of people that chimed in with raised hands. If somebody wants to go next.
Andrea, this is Angie.
Uh-huh.
I have usually out of 110 slides, I may have 75 of them with x-rays. PowerPoint. So I'm going to have to tag or put a description under all of those?
Theoretically, yes.
One unit.
Yeah. Well, okay. So keep in mind, remember, progress, not perfection. Okay. We're not expecting you to go through every single image within a month, and make them accessible. This is something that, if you want to go through and work on a couple of images that are the most important, then do those. For you guys specifically, what I would do is not necessarily focus on maybe images, because that may not be the most important thing when it comes to your particular class. Does that make sense? Maybe you want to focus on making sure your PDFs are readable or tagged or something like that. So depending on, kind of your discipline and what you think is the most important, you work on that thing. I'm just going to show you guys how to kind of update all of the things. And then we're going to ask that you just progress upwards as much as you can. We're not going to give you a value to do. We're not going to say you have to be at a certain thing by a certain time. We're just going to show you the tool, and we would like for you throughout your teaching career here to every semester try to increase that number, if that makes sense.
Okay. And we're like Casey, we have technical standards they have to meet, so we don't really ever have anybody.
Yeah, no, I know that you guys on the image front, you're less likely to have situations like other faculty where they do have someone that are visually impaired. And so they would need, say, a screen reader and things like that. So what I would do, depending on your discipline, focus on the thing that's most important to your discipline, if that makes sense. Okay? All right, so what I wanted to show you now are a couple of other items. For PDF, so this is my Chapter 20 PDF. I think I showed you this a while ago where it looked like it was untagged. So what I'm going to show you is how to actually make a tagged PDF that you did not get. So I'm going to show you also how to get to do this with a Word document as well. So I'm going to show you how to make a PDF that is tagged, but never was in a format that's in a Word document or a PowerPoint or anything like that. The only way I have this document is in PDF form. So it's a little difficult to edit PDFs like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and download this. And what it says to do, okay, so we can go through and how to tag a PDF. And it's going to say, hey, do you have the original document? Can you get a hold of that original editable version of that file? Nope. I don't have an editable version, meaning I don't have it in Word or PowerPoint or LibreOffice. So I'm going to click no. And at this point, this is kind of where I lie on the tagged PDF where you don't have an editable version is like, oh, okay. This is a little bit of an issue. It says, hey, well, you could probably provide one as a reference, maybe in a library or something. That's not a valid option for us. So we're not going to have that. And it's going to say, well, okay, you can make an alternative format. And it's going to say what you could do is click browse for help. And what this is going to do is it's going to take you to Blackboard's what help page of how to create PDFs in alternative formats. So what I went ahead and did, I'll show you how to get to all of that. But what I went ahead and did is I'm going to just show you right now how to do it. So what I can do is I can download this document. And there are a variety of ways in which to do it, but I'm going to show you using one specific, no, we don't want to do that. I think it should be downloading, maybe. Let me go ahead and just click this now. And so we'll download it. Okay, so what happens with a PDF that you only have PDF form, to make it tagged. Now, is this particular document readable? Yes. How do I know? I can select text. Okay. If I use a screen reader, what it's going to do is literally start here up at the top, and it's going to say chapter 20, organic chemistry, 1077. And it's literally going to go through each thing and read word for word. And sometimes you may have items in here that it's going to read that you don't want the screen reader to read. The tagged portion of that will tell the screen reader what's important and what's not. So how do you make this a tagged PDF? Adobe Acrobat is a document or a program that can do this. And so what you would do is click View, hide show navigation panes, and choose the tag. And I will provide the documentation so that you guys will have this stepwise to be able to do this. And essentially in the tag section, what I would do is I want to add tags to the document. Adobe Acrobat does this immediately. Here are all the tags. So you actually know kind of what thing is low, medium, high confidence. It will tell the screen reader how to read the document. Now that I have that tagged, I click Save. And when I come into the accessibility score, I'm going to drag and drop that into replacing that untagged version. And it does take a minute. This is a fairly long or a large document. I think it's 50 something pages for that chapter. And once it's done uploading, it will immediately replace the older document with a new tag document, and I should get a new accessibility score. And so hopefully in a second it will do that. I know this morning it took a minute for this to happen. And we're going to let that go. I'm sorry, this is taking a little bit longer than I would hope.
Andrea, do we all have access to the Adobe version that's needed for this? Because I understand that there's different license versions floating around.
Right. If you do not, I will get you access to it.
Okay.
Okay. So now I tagged this using Adobe. It's gone up 46%. All right. So that sounds great. If I close that, now my little button has gone from red to yellow. So pretty cool. I've increased my score. It's not perfect, but that's okay. The things that Blackboard kind of had issues with, so remember we go back up to all the issues. I have some images in here like these guys right here. In fact, I have quite a few images that don't have alt text. They have text down here, so I'm probably going to say, okay, that's not a big deal. Doesn't have a title. I could go back and fix that. Insufficient text contrast. I probably can't do anything about that, so I'm just going to leave it. And we don't have guidance on how to fix these other things. So it looks like this, the 46 might be the highest I can make for this. And I'm perfectly happy with that right now. I'm just going to leave it. And so I can go through and I can do that to all of the rest of my PDFs. This study guide here is a PDF that works just like this chapter 2. It's a readable PDF, but it turns out I've also posted a PDF here. This is sample Lewis dot structure. That's a scanned version. So does everyone know the difference between a readable and a scanned PDF? If you look at this PDF, I cannot select, if you can see I'm moving my mouse, I can't select any text whatsoever. And so that's something that I literally put, say, in our copy machine or a scanner and scanned it into an image. Okay. And so when I click on the accessibility, the score, the Ally is going to say, hey, this is a PDF that is scanned. And you can identify what does this mean, so forth and so on. And it's going to say, how do you fix this? And so it's kind of going to go along the ideas of, well, do you have an original file or no? I do not happen to have a text-based version of this. So in order to actually replace this, I would have to go back and actually type this thing out. So in this particular case, Blackboard is not going, or Ally is not going to be able to replace this item. It's just going to tell you, hey, in fact, out of all of the PDF issues, whether you had images in the previous one or not, this one is the most egregious in the fact that it's a scanned PDF. Okay, we really, really can't have a scanned PDF if at all possible. When it comes into our accessible courses. So for this particular one, I'd have to go back and type something up. I don't typically provide that to my students. I just happen to put that in this morning for you guys to see. The other thing is I happen to have a PowerPoint here. My PowerPoint I posted has a really good accessibility rating. I have a 77%, so we're in the green. It may say that, I have a couple of issues like, there might be some insufficient contrast. There's some images missing some descriptions. So I could go back and add those if I needed to. But, for right now, I think a 77 is pretty good. I'm probably going to leave that and go and address some other things that may need some addressing. So for this one, the Chapter 20 lecture notes, this one is a Word document. In my Word document, I have some images in it that doesn't have descriptions, like this guy right here. And there might be a few other things, like I don't have headings within this particular thing. This is something I just typed up and I used the, outline component within Blackboard, Word, where you just add numbers or letters and those kinds of things to organize. But I didn't provide any headings whatsoever. So if I wanted to actually fix something like that, I could fix the headings. I could look at instructions on how to do that. And I could go into Microsoft Office to do that. And it's really, really easy. You just select the content that you want and you add a style. A style is going to be something like what we call heading 1, 2, or 3. You add those in there, re-upload this, your score goes from a 32 to, say, probably a 53, I think is what the issue said it would go through. And so those things are things that you can do to increase the readability and usability for your diverse learners. Now, is this top priority compared to some other things? Maybe, maybe not. I might say out of my course, maybe top priority would be this scanned PDF. And that might be something that I work on for this semester, fixing that thing with this within this unit. Does that make sense to everybody? Because we all know that taking a PDF that's scanned and typing that out would take a little bit of time. So working on 1 or 2 things is perfectly sufficient. Okay?
Hey, Andrea?
Yeah.
You keep mentioning Word. What about Google Docs, Google Slides? Is it compatible?
Yeah. The Google Slides and Google Docs works the same way. You can add headings, styled headings the same way as you would in Word. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Andrea, real quick question.
Yeah.
Is this something that will work both on Learn and Ultra, or is this just a Learn thing?
No, it works on both Learn and Ultra.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Okay. So I think the last thing that I wanted to show you guys is that these are things that you can do in your course, and keep in mind what's our mantra for AC and Ally. It's progress, not perfection. So if you notice, I went through here and I went, my score for chapter 20 is pretty good. It's still readable. I have some tagged components in it. I'm going to leave it for that for now. My thing that I have decided in this unit that's a serious problem, though, is this scanned PDF. So what I'm going to do this semester is I'm going to work on that. Okay. That will overall increase my entire course score. Okay. So how do I know what my entire course score happens to be? Well, it turns out whenever I turn on Ally in your course, under course tools, if you click the drop down arrow, there's going to be a new tab that says accessibility report. And when you click accessibility report, a new window is going to pop up that Ally has looked at my entire course and has given me an accessibility score rating. My entire course, by the way, is slightly under the average for our entire institution, is at 58%. It will tell me in an overview how many things I have. I happen to have 49 images, 48 items, 33 Word documents, 21 PDF documents, so forth and so on, posted in this course. And it actually will separate the things in, what are some of the easiest things you could fix to increase this overall rating? In this little box, I could click start, and it would take me to these items in kind of a list form, rather than me having to go through each little tab in my course and looking and searching for things. So if you wanted to actually look at your ratings of individual items in the reports tab and edit them there rather than within your kind of say units or modules or weeks or whatever it is you use, you could do that way. Okay. Now I'm going to go back to this overview. I have a lot of things that are pretty low. In fact, I have 73 out of 170 things, 173 things that have a low score rating. So if I wanted to look at those things, I could click there, and I have some things that are at a 0. So obviously that example, Lewis dot structure problems, that was the one that's a scanned PDF. It has a score of 0. So that's something that I would definitely want to address. Now, there are some issues that it kind of posts some things down here that are maybe things that as a category, it will post things. So for instance, if I wanted to look at the documents that contain images without alt text, here's the category. Every single thing that happens to fit in that category are here. I would click this arrow, and now all of those things happen to be here. So I could look at just one category if that's all I wanted to address as well. So there's a variety of ways to get to the documents in which you would want to kind of address an accessibility issues. So this is an overview. You can actually take this and kind of screenshot it and keep it. I will tell you this morning, my score was, I think, a 56, if I'm not mistaken. And I just updated that chapter 20 with tagged, so that moved me up 2%. So that's progress, right? Progress, not perfection. And that's what our mantra is, right? Progress, not perfection. So another way I could look at things are just content overall. This is every single item within my course, all 173 things. And right now it's listed, they actually order them based on score. And the score is either lowest to highest or highest to lowest. So if I click this score button here, I would actually reorder those things. And I know my lecture videos in chapter 10 have an accessibility score of 100. And so I can go through several pages to look through that. So I've got quite a few things that actually really do meet our accessibility score. Okay. So what have we kind of done today is we've looked at the faculty view when it comes to Ally in our course, and the new things that you're going to see are going to be that accessibility score icon and then the alternative formats icon. For student view, if we click that, the new view that they're going to have is just the addition of the alternative formats icon. Keep in mind, remember, they cannot see the accessibility score icon within their course. And then the other thing that we've looked at is the reports. So if you want to look at your course overall, look at the accessibility report, and you can have an idea of where your course overall fits in that accessibility score. Okay. Now, the one thing that I just want to make sure that you guys note when I was talking about whether or not students can see that accessibility score, say like if I were to show this in class, keep in mind when I log into Blackboard, it's going to have my view, right? And if I were in class and I shared my screen and showed them this view, they will be able to see what you see because you're in your view. Okay, so think about that. If you do happen to share your screen in your Blackboard course to your students, do you want them to be able to see the faculty view, or do you want to switch to student preview so that they can see what they see? That's a personal preference on your part. And for me, I wouldn't. I think it might be just situational. I wouldn't really care if the students could see it or not. But sometimes it might be distracting. So I might go into the student preview for the students. So are there any questions so far? Yes, go ahead.
Andrea, what about courses that are not fully online, but we have things in Blackboard?
Right. No, this will be turned on for everyone in the spring. So even if your course isn't on an online class, say you're teaching a face-to-face class, that it will be on. And so this is why we want all faculty to really have an opportunity to work with Ally and see what it looks like, so that, you know, it's not something that's surprising to everyone. So if you just happen to have, you know, a small amount of content, because you may or may not put a lot of stuff in a face-to-face on Blackboard, whatever you do have in there, the students will be able to download in an alternative format. If that makes sense.
What I'm asking about is, I know I started just scanning my personal notes in for the students because they wanted it. It's like, okay, but that's not something that's being used for an online course, and it's not something I would want to spend the incredible number of hours. But nobody's. I'm just saying a face-to-face form might get a much lower accessibility score.
And keep in mind, and I know what you're thinking, that we all think about, oh, it's a score, it's a score. I'm going to be scored on it.
I just want to say, is anybody even going to look at it if it's a face-to-face class? Or
probably not, Kathleen.
I mean, I would hate to take those notes out.
No, I would not. I would not. What I'm really referring to, especially for a scanned PDF, if you're teaching an online class, that's going to be something for difficult for students to download in any kind of other way, right? So if there's any kind of accessibility issue with that student, if they're, you know, need accommodations, it's going to be difficult for them to be able to use. When it comes to your face-to-face classes, I did the same thing. I used to use a document camera, and I would write my notes on paper and project that on the wall. And then I would scan them in the copy machine as a PDF and then post that, just in case the students wanted to go back and, you know, compare their notes or something like that. I wouldn't consider that something that I would spend time worrying about, if that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Anybody else have any questions?
When's it going to be active in our Blackboard courses?
So since you guys have now kind of seen what it looks like and what it can do, I will activate this on Monday morning for you. As soon as we're done with this, I'm going to send you all another email of and I would like for you guys, as much as possible, to leave it word for word, an announcement that you send to your students telling them what has now been turned on in their course. Because keep in mind, so Rich, a student could be taking a course from you, but taking a course from somebody else who that hasn't taken this Ally training, and this is not turned on in their course. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to make sure that we communicate with those students, hey, this thing has been turned on. This is what it does for you. And this is the little icon that you can click to make that happen. It's real short. It's just a short paragraph. But I would like for you to send that out as soon as possible. And you might want to include in that telling them it will be turned on Monday.
Okay.
For them. So that way they have a kind of a heads up. It's not going to be anything that's drastic. Keep in mind, remember, it's just this A with a little down arrow. That's the only thing that will change for them. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. All right. Any other questions? No. So it might be a good idea for you guys. Now, keep in mind, I am not going to do this in your individual courses. Okay. So we do not want to use Ally in any kind of punitive way. I hope everyone understands that. It's not going to be, hey, your accessibility score is a 50, you know, we're going to write you up or something like that. That's not what this is used for. This is a tool that will assist you to improve the accessibility of your course. Keep in mind, I want everybody to hear me again, progress, not perfection. So if you hear me or heard me say earlier that, hey, this chapter 20 is good for me, I'm going to leave it. I'm not going to address this or look at this anymore. I've got other things to do. So as long as I've increased my score, then I'm fine with that. Do I like the fact that my score overall says 58? Not so much. I'm a little OCD on that part. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend, you know, hey, if I've got an extra half an hour, you know, 1 week, which I know we're all busy, so that's highly unlikely for a lot of us. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to go, hey, I'm going to pick this one item and I'm going to work on that one thing. And that will maybe bump my score up 1%. And then, hey, I've done my duty for that day, if that makes sense. So just, you know, try to increase your score as best you can. Progress, just not perfection. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to stop sharing, and then I'm going to stop our recording, if that's okay with you guys. And then I will post this